Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Marta Segura, the Director of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office, and we're so thrilled that you chose to spend some time with us this evening for the community report back on equitable building decarbonization for the City of Los Angeles. So again, good evening, welcome. Our Climate Emergency Mobilization Office at the City of Los Angeles launched this Climate Equity LA series to strengthen our community-driven civic engagement and governance model at the city so that we can shape more equitable climate policy. So tonight we're offering you some amazing speakers rooted in community voices to engage dialogue. And I hope that everyone here can help me acknowledge the contributions of the many organizations that contributed to this report. And I also particularly want to thank Liberty Hill for being a partner in engaging these communities and all of the hard work that was put into creating not just this report, but the recommendations and the advocacy and the grassroots engagement that pulled together this report for informing the city on what we need to pay attention to as we decarbonize buildings, as we decarbonize homes, so that we can prevent unintended consequences. So this report that reflects community voices, one of the main takeaways you will hear with the panelists today is we don't want a green transition and building decarbonization to create any displacement or to create undue burdens and costs on those who can least afford it. But before I go any further, I would very much like to thank Council President Krikorian. Council President Krikorian is a climate champion who just led our council in a historic vote to ban oil drilling and phasing it out completely from the City of Los Angeles. Council President Krikorian has also had the vision to designate a chief heat officer for the City of Los Angeles, which I believe has already had an impact on saving lives at the last historic heat wave that we had in September. And he is a leader in equitable building decarbonization. I'm honored to introduce to you now, Council President Krikorian.
Well, thank you very much, Marta. And thank you for your service as that chief heat officer. Your work is very much making me proud that we had the foresight to create that office, because you're doing a job in that office that's really setting the example for the rest of the country. And so I'm very grateful to you for your work and for all of the work that you and your team are doing on climate change on behalf of the city. So I want to thank you, the team, all of the commissioners who are participating tonight, and all of the members of the community and stakeholders for taking such an active role in helping to shape the policy of the City of Los Angeles in a way that's really historic and again, really nation leading in my view. You know, I'm speaking to you at a time that's both awkward and optimistic. Just a few weeks ago, I became council president. It was kind of a battlefield promotion during a time of great crisis in our city, as you all know, because of an extremely painful, scandalous situation that arose among some of our members on the city council that led to the fallout of which was that we had one resignation and I became council president. And that has been a very painful moment of reckoning for the city council, and I think for our whole city. At the same time, this is a historic moment of transition of authority and transition of governance in the City of Los Angeles. Maybe an unprecedented moment and an unprecedented opportunity for us to turn the page and start fresh with a new kind of city government. We have 3 brand new citywide elected officials. A third of our city council will be brand new members as of Tuesday. And so this is really a moment of opportunity that we have to seize, and we have to seize it together. And I really feel very optimistic about the future over the coming years if we seize that moment. This is an opportunity for us to make sure that our city government is more responsive, more representative, more forward-looking, more collaborative, and really more respectful of one another and of all of the members of the public. And the work that we're doing right now in the midst of all this, in the midst of this transition and crisis, is really remarkable. Just in the last week, think of some of the things this city council has delivered in the last week alone. As you mentioned, Martha, we moved forward with a citywide ban on oil and gas extraction throughout the city of Los Angeles. That's a remarkable step forward in a city that owes much of its historic growth to the oil and gas industry. Early in the last century, we were the Saudi Arabia of the world, basically, with oil and gas production here. And now we've taken the step forward, maybe the most important environmental justice measure that this city has ever taken, in ensuring that those oil and gas wells that have been right next to schools, right next to homes, will be phased out and shut down in a safe way. In addition, we banned expanded styrofoam, that so contaminates our waterways, litters our streets, and we're banning the use of EPS for food containers, as well as moving forward with zero waste policies, all of which directly relate to climate impacts as well. Today, more pertinent to our discussion today, just today, this morning, the council voted to pass an ordinance banning the use of gas in new buildings in the city of Los Angeles. So 3 big steps forward just in the last week, all related to climate and protecting our environment. And then our continuing work on LA 100 is going to lead this city to be carbon-free in its electricity production by 2035. The largest municipal utility in America will be carbon-free by 2035, thanks to LA 100. So we're going to continue to fight for all of these things, even as we're continuing to try to ensure that our council merits the respect of the public. And we've continued to join with the public in calling for the resignation of Councilmember De Leon. And I know there are some folks who think that until that happens, the council should not be taking action. But the work of the last week alone demonstrates why it is so vital that we continue to do that work, even in these difficult and really painful times for our city. So it was about a year ago that I introduced the motion with Councilmember Koretz and Councilmember Rahman that started the community assemblies process and sought a more thoughtful, community-informed, inclusive, best practices approach to building decarbonization that would bring in as much of the input from stakeholders and the public as possible. And I just want to say how much I appreciate everybody who's on this call, but also everybody who's participated all along in this process to get us to this point, because our work product, our policymaking is made much more effective and much better by having the input of the people who are impacted by those policies. So I really very much appreciate all of you for taking that time. And we were able to achieve, as I mentioned, the big step forward with new buildings. But the next part of this process is going to be the harder part. And that is not just requiring decarbonization of new buildings, but how do we go back and ensure the decarbonization of existing buildings? Much more complicated, likely much more expensive, many more challenges when it comes to some of the things you mentioned, displacement, increases in cost, which may affect affordability. Those are all really difficult problems that we're going to have to work together to resolve, but we have to do that difficult work. We have to do the decarbonization work, and we have to also ensure that those other related issues are addressed in the best possible way. Energy that's used to cool, heat, and power our buildings is responsible for 43% of greenhouse gas emissions in Los Angeles, almost half. So, and even more than the transportation sector. So there's no way that we can achieve our climate goals without taking this challenge on head on, taking it on squarely. And at the same time that we're doing that, we have to work together to ensure that we can maintain affordability of the housing stock, ensure that we continue to encourage new investment in improvements to existing buildings that won't be made uneconomic by decarbonization policies. We have to make sure that we're not displacing people from their homes. That's work that we can do as long as we continue to be committed to the goal, all of those goals and achieving all of those goals together so that we can ensure healthy, safe buildings for everyone, and ensuring that working together, we're meeting our climate goals and doing our share to help save the planet at the same time. So I really appreciate everybody being involved today. We can't do this work without your input. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Council President Krikorian, for your words of wisdom and for all the work that you did in the last couple of weeks with the rest of the City Council to pass those historic bans that I know will make the city even more visible as a leader in climate, but equitable climate policy at the same time. So thank you so very much for your leadership.
Thank you.
Now I have the pleasure to introduce Councilmember Nithya Raman. Nithya Raman, since taking office, has had a priority of compassionate and effective services to move with greater urgency to reach our climate goals, especially with building decarbonization. She spearheaded recent building decarbonization work, partnering with her colleagues to introduce motions to require that all new buildings be all electric and create a plan to equitably electrify existing buildings. Her office has also worked closely with community partners to shape this work and center renters and workers as these policies are developed. So without further delay, I present to you the Honorable Councilmember Nithya Raman.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I just wanted to, I'm really here to say, express my gratitude. Today was I feel like every day at City Council, particularly in recent weeks, has been a mixed bag in many ways, has brought home both the importance of the work that we're doing here in city government and here in City Hall, but also the immensity of the challenges and the divisions that exist in our city today. And today was definitely one of those days, but one really big thing that we did today, as my colleague, Council President Krikorian mentioned, is that we took the final step towards implementing this new law, requiring that all new building construction in the city of Los Angeles is basically going to be all electric. All that's left now is the mayor's signature, which is incredibly, incredibly exciting. And I do want to say, I think a lot of you on this call, a lot of the people who are watching this have engaged with the city over a long time on a number of difficult issues. We're doing this on time. We're doing this on the timeline that we set out to do it initially. That is a big deal here in the city of Los Angeles. And that's happened because of two reasons. One is because of the partnership and diligence of our departments and of our staff, including people in my own staff, Josh Nooney, who's on this call, who's my legislative director, and the other staff members across council offices that made this a priority, but also because of the pressure from the public. I think people who are engaged on these issues saw new building decarbonization as a priority for the city of Los Angeles. They saw it as something that we could do and that we should do. And to me, it felt like it was all of us working together, the coalition of individuals and groups that really came together to make sure that we met these deadlines, that we're here today, which is incredibly, incredibly exciting. The work is just starting with decarbonization. And I think this particular engagement, this forum that we're having here, is going to be so important as we turn our focus to what will definitely be a much heavier lift, retrofitting our existing buildings. It is going to be a lot harder to ensure that we are truly getting to all our buildings being decarbonized here in the city of Los Angeles. And there is no way that we can take on this next step without the wisdom of community weighing in and telling us how we can do this without causing greater harm. This is such a critical moment for us to be engaging in this work. There is, I think there's so much incredible urgency around climate legislation right now and climate policy. We last Friday, we passed the new AQMP at the South Coast AQMD, which also saw some really big changes in terms of how we're thinking about emissions here. Big changes. Are they big enough changes? Are they ambitious enough to encompass our new climate goals? I don't know, but they're certainly bigger than what the AQMD had taken on before. And I think this moment where a lot of the agencies and the entities that are operating in these spaces are finally starting to catch up to the pace of action that's required for us to meet our climate goals, this is a really exciting moment for us to be here and for us to be doing this work. But this kind of engagement, the kind of engagement that the CEMO is leading, that these climate equity series are kind of anchoring for us here in the city, this is the kind of work that needs to be done in order for us to do it all in the right way. We have to do it in a way that centers equity. We have to do it in a way that centers environmental justice. We cannot make the same mistakes that we've been making on these issues for decades. We cannot step forward into a new future making the same mistakes that we did in the past. We cannot, in the middle of the biggest housing and homelessness crisis that this region has ever seen, let the cost of retrofits be passed on to tenants who are already bearing unspeakably huge burdens here in this region. We cannot do anything that will increase the cost of housing and do it on the backs of our most vulnerable residents. That means that this city will not be able to do this work alone. We are going to need help from the state. We are going to need help from the federal government. And these are resources that the city of Los Angeles cannot advocate for alone. We must, as one voice, speak about what we need in order to make this transition to a better future without sacrificing our most vulnerable residents. And we must, as one voice, speak to all of these other entities and say, these are exactly the resources that we need to not just get to a more sustainable future, but to get to a more equitable future. And that's why I think the work that this forum is doing is so important for us as we take these next steps. I am so proud to have engaged with so many of the partners that I see in this room, the LEAP LA Coalition, with Lane, our environmental justice partners who hold our feet to the fire, not just at city council meetings, but at every single AQMD meeting where letters are written and where comments are made that clarify exactly the importance of every decision that's being made. And I'm really proud to have worked also with city departments to bring forward the work that we did today, but also to be committed to doing the work that we need to do in the future. I know we can get there. I know we can do it if we work together. And I want to just express my sincerest gratitude for having me today, for allowing me to share this space with you, and for allowing me to learn from you and to continue to learn from you as we put together this legislation together that will get us out of this crisis that we're facing. So thank you all again. I'm really committed to continuing the dialogue and so grateful for all of your time and all of your engagement.
Thank you, Councilmember Rahman. We really appreciate your time and your leadership and your commitment and compassion to every person, every constituent in the city of Los Angeles. Next, I want to introduce to you Second Vice President of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission, Antonio Sanchez. He is also the Political Director for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers 11. And today, we have the honor of introducing him. He will bring a labor perspective He brings that labor perspective to our commission and equitable workforce development. So without further delay, Commissioner Antonio Sanchez.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Marta. Let me thank Rebecca as well, too, and all the staff at the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office. You guys have been incredible. But I'll get to that in a bit. Council President Krikorian and Councilmember Rahman, truly appreciate the way that you've been able to handle the city council during the past couple of weeks. I watch almost every day, and it's frustrating, it's heartbreaking. There's also some anger there, but all that to say is I really appreciate the way that you are all helping keep the city family moving forward, because that's what we need to do as well. So thank you for your work. I'll just speak a little bit about the commission, a little bit about the building trades and my union, and then we'll just get to the work. I'll try to keep us on time here. So the commission is made up of currently 15 members. It's a diverse group of individuals, many from the most pollution burdened communities in the city of Los Angeles. We have Indigenous representation, experts in workforce development, the environmental justice community, a small business owner. The commission, of course, is new, as you've heard. It's also young. And, I'll just take a moment here to pause and say, we're seeing a generational shift. We're seeing it in the legislature with millennials being elected to represent us in Sacramento, on the county level, and on the city council. So I just want to thank the new folks, the young folks, also the folks that have been continuing the work. But it's just great to see so many new people get involved and continue that work. So overall, the commission was created to influence and advise the city council on equitable climate policy. I am the organized labor member. My family and I live in Council District 14 in El Sereno, a heavily impacted community according to the Cal Enviro screen, and a community that we love. My day job, so I'm the political director for Local 11. I'll tell you a little bit about the building trades and also about my union and how our work, of course, is also important to the greater work that the city is doing. So my union is an affiliate of the LA Orange County Building and Construction Trades Council. The council is made up of 150,000 construction workers, right? Union members. Together, we have about 21,000 apprentices, 21,000 apprentices that live in Orange and LA County. That's more than any state in the country. I didn't say county, it's any state. And I mentioned that because we've done a tremendous amount of work in reaching out to local residents and in including the next generation, as we're talking about now, to come into the trade so that our unions are representative of Los Angeles. Local 11 has about 2,000 apprentices. That makes us the largest electrical apprenticeship program in the country. And I'll say now, if you're interested or know anybody that's interested in applying to our apprenticeship, just visit laett.com. Our application is online. All of the information is there, so people know how to be successful in the apprenticeship. I'll also describe the Inside Wireman apprenticeship. It's a 5-year program. The apprentices don't pay a dime out of their pocket. And I mentioned this because of the opportunity it gives to folks wanting to better their lot, to uplift their family, because these are serious careers. Our apprentices learn out in the field. They learn theory in the classroom. They learn directly from a journey level person. And it's a 5-year program, as I mentioned. Recently, we launched a pre-apprenticeship program aimed at helping U.S. veterans learn about the trade and get into an IBW apprenticeship program of their choice. So while still serving, they can get a approval from their commanding officer and come into this training program. It's called the Veterans Electrical Entry Program, or the VEEP program. So that's exciting. We just had our graduation last week. This is the first time we do this. We had 12 veterans. 8 of them are staying here in Los Angeles County. 4 are leaving the state. But what we're doing is connecting them with the IBW locals in the states that they're from, so that they gain direct entry into that apprenticeship, which is really hasn't really been done that way for quite some time. I see your hand, Andres. So what I'll get to is recommendations, and Martha will review these, but recommendation 5 relates to workers and job opportunities. So let me just emphasize this. I firmly believe that including the building trades in our efforts to lower emissions not only makes for better policy, but makes for better politics. We have training centers here. We have the apprenticeships ready. We have the workforce available to aid in our efforts. So my ask, and I've been doing this in the commission, and I won't stop, is that we continue with that equity lens, and continue to include organized labor, because we are members of the community, and we all have to really work conjointly to make these goals possible. Thank you very much. That concludes my comments.
Thank you so much, Vice President Sanchez. We really appreciate your participation here and on the commission, and look forward to many more years of working with you. So everyone, thank you so much for being here again. I just wanted to convey a few things before I go through the recommendations. And I'm also very inspired by all of the 3 speakers that just spoke, and such historic changes that have happened amongst such really devastating and historic current history and post-pandemic, post-Trump administration. The fact that we were able to accomplish all of this as a city and keep the city family together, and keep all of you engaged is really a sign of our commitment to ensuring that we do have policies that are compassionate. So back to the report. I believe the report reflects community voices who participated in our building decarbonization workshops, and also our focus groups. The report offers recommendations from the community. And one of the larger takeaways, as I mentioned earlier, is as we are greening our housing and our buildings, we shouldn't cause further displacements or increase the cost of utility bills, which can in turn create more homelessness. Rather than just a call for carbon emissions and reductions, we have an opportunity to improve public health, increase housing security, lower our electric bills, build habitable and healthy homes and neighborhoods, and create opportunities for well-paying, high-road jobs in the green energy and green climate industry. So this report was only possible, however, through the wisdom of the community, with a meaningful engagement process that was co-designed with community-based organizations representing the most pollution-burdened areas of Los Angeles. And they too deserve to live in healthy, thriving communities and offer the city policy recommendations. So without further delay, I want to start with the 10 recommendations. First this is the overview of all 10 recommendations, but let's start with slide 1. Recommendation 1 was to include frontline communities in the design, implementation, and evaluation of all building decarbonization policies and programs. So far, so good. We have definitely been engaging and involving, not just in the Climate Equity LA series, but in discussions with the City Council. And I think that that's something that I just heard a huge commitment that we will continue to do. We want to leverage building decarbonization to improve public health and habitability, especially in the midst of of LA being the #1 city in the nation, or the #1 region in the nation, at risk for extreme heat. What does that mean? That means that we have too many excessive deaths and hospitalizations during our heat waves in Los Angeles, because the heat waves combined with air pollution and health disparities in air pollution neighborhoods create more deaths and more hospitalizations. And traditionally, it's been known as heat has been known as a silent killer. So as we decarbonize buildings and we decarbonize homes, we're becoming a more climate adapted city, but also improving public health. Next. We want to embed tenant protections into building decarbonization policies and programs. We want to operationalize policies that will protect everyone who lives in apartments, particularly tenants who live in affordable housing units and rent protected units. We want to embed affordable housing protections for building decarbonization policies and programs, because as you recall, in earthquake retrofits throughout the nation, really, sometimes that led to displacement of the tenants, and that was an unintended consequence. And we want to make sure the retrofits for building decarbonization don't lead to those unintended consequences. Next. We want to embed worker protections and new job opportunities for frontline communities into building decarbonization policies and programs. And the apprenticeship programs that Commissioner Sanchez just mentioned are a great way to ensure that we create more jobs that are fair wage, living wage, and market rate, so that people can afford to live in their neighborhoods and live not just healthy, thriving lives, but economically viable lives. And number 6, prioritize public funding for decarbonization of existing residential buildings in frontline communities. As Councilmember Rahman mentioned, we need partnerships. We need the state, we need the federal government, we probably need private partnerships as well, so that we can create a sustainable funding model so that we don't pass the burden of costs onto tenants. Number 7, please. This is our Equitable Building Decarbonization report. You can find it on our website. But I think we still need to go on to the next slide, which I believe is number 7. Great. We need to expand education, outreach, and technical assistance related to climate, equitable climate policies, and building decarbonization. I think those go hand in hand. I was just mentioning to some of the panelists that I heard about the Promotora Network in Santa Barbara County, and in order to educate the Spanish-speaking community, they are counting on that Promotora Network. And Promotoras, if you haven't heard of them before, they're health educators out in the community who are culturally relevant, linguistically relevant, and they knock on doors of their neighborhoods, and they ensure that there is awareness and outreach and technical assistance, because with the Inflation Reduction Act and the climate investments in infrastructure, there will also be many opportunities for our communities, and we don't want our communities to miss out on those. Number 8, leverage existing decarbonization efforts to gather data on technical and financial requirements of building decarbonization. And that is something that, again, I think the city of Los Angeles is leading on with our EB program and our building performance metrics. And we're sharing that information with LA County. And it's also being used for the CAMER program that LADWP has launched to decarbonize affordable housing buildings throughout the city of Los Angeles. Next, please. Design a flexible, equity-centered, multi-phased approach to building decarbonization. We can't do it all at once, since we need a sustainable funding model. We will need a multi-phased approach. We will need pilot programs to learn from those pilot programs what it really costs, how we can protect tenants, what are the challenges for creating equitable green jobs. And as we do it carefully through pilot programs and learn from those pilot programs, we can accelerate the rate as we begin to find the solutions and the pathway that allows us to decarbonize. Number 10, identify all new and existing possible sources of public, private, and philanthropic funding to support equitable building decarbonization. And for this, we definitely need everybody: philanthropy, corporations, the state, the federal government, and all of you to provide ideas on how we can create more sustainable funding models. So those are the 10 recommendations. And I really want to take this opportunity to go on to our next, I think we're going to our Menti poll, Andres. So we're going to have a Q&A. Just let me say that. We're going to have a Q&A. We're going to have a panel before the Q&A. But even before that, I want to introduce our Menti polls because we want to get some more information from all of you on what you feel thus far about the topic that we're discussing and what is most important to you. So the first question is, which benefit is most important to you with the removal of gas fuels from your homes, from your decarbonized homes? And we're going to put those links in the chat space. So as you are listening to our panelists, you can take the polls and they'll populate. And then once the panelists are done, then we will show you the results of those polls. I hope that makes sense. So it's kind of multitasking. You're listening to the panelists while you're taking the polling that will be there for you in the chat space. Great. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you, First Vice President Antonio Sanchez. We really appreciate you. And I think we're going to, Ray, I think we're going to need to spotlight the next slide. I'd like to introduce to you Michelle Gutierrez, our Youth Commissioner on the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission, and also Alex Jassett, who is, can we see Alex's slide? There you go. The Nuclear Threats and Energy Justice Program Manager for PSRLA, but he's also the representative for the LEAP LA Coalition. And we're about to hear from both of them so that they can give us their perspective on the report, the recommendations, and what it means to the work that they do. So why don't we get started with Alex?
Great, thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. As Marta said, my name is Alex Jassett, and I'm here representing Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles, and as a member of the LEAP Coalition. And both of those organizations and coalitions worked for years advocating for the creation of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office as a vehicle for centering justice and equity principles in the city's climate policies. LEAP's founding mission was to ensure an equitable and just transition away from fossil fuels for the city. And this year, as Council President Krikorian has mentioned, has seen many victories on that front. First of all, I want to thank Marta and the CEMO and Liberty Hill for providing this space and inviting us to speak tonight. It has been incredible to have such a strong ally and advocate for environmental justice embedded within the city's institutions. And we're just really excited about all the things that we have planned for next year and the years ahead. And I really appreciate everyone joining us here tonight. So as a little bit of background, several years ago, LEAP helped co-design the structure of CEMO to be set up with three distinct parts. There was the office itself, the community assemblies, which was transformed into the Climate Equity LA series, and the Climate Emergency Commission, all of which we felt were necessary to ensure adequate community and stakeholder involvement in the city's climate policy decisions. This was obviously a tall order for a newly created office with limited funding and staff, but we knew that we were building the ship as we sail it, as we often say, and that we had to start somewhere. So when our coalition first heard about building decarb legislation coming to City Council, we were excited, but we were also concerned. I think often climate policies prioritize so-called low-hanging fruit approaches, which tend to benefit wealthier early adopters who gain the most from partial subsidies and the health and economic benefits that follow. And this often leaves low-income and underserved communities with worse air quality, worse pollution burdens, and higher bills. And we've seen this with solar panels and EV policies, and we were determined to do something different with building decarbonization. The LEAP Coalition realized that we needed to check in with our partners, especially labor and housing partners, to make sure that we were taking a holistic approach that really considered all of the unintended consequences across the sectors, especially with such a big transition. And so we set up regular meetings with the Repower Coalition to specifically identify some of these concerns and begin to figure out solutions to address them. And so I just want to particularly thank all of the other LEAP groups, and as well as Lane and Sage and the Repower organizations for all their contributions to this. We knew that the city, if it was sort of left to its own devices, might be able to come up with a decarbonization strategy, but that they probably wouldn't be able to come up with an equitable decarbonization strategy unless they had serious and sustained community involvement in the policy design process. We knew that there were risks to advancing these policies, particularly for BIPOC and low-income communities, many of whom to this day are still recovering from the effects of the pandemic. And who often bear the brunt of poorly designed policy. The risks for tenant harassment and displacement, the impacts on job quality and quantity, the financial and health disparities associated with some people having access to these benefits and others not, were all concerns that we identified. And we knew that there were probably many other concerns that we hadn't even considered yet. But we also knew that building decarb, if implemented equitably, could advance racial, environmental, and economic justice at the same time as tackling the largest source of emissions in the city, which to many of our communities translates into real public health improvements, not only in homes, but also in the frontline communities who bear the disproportionate harm from our city's energy policies. So thanks to the advocacy of so many of our allied organizations in LEAP and Repower, the council agreed that the city's building decarb approach should be the first set of policies to go through CEMO's community oversight mechanisms. And incredibly valuable input was added at each step of that process. From our coalition meetings where we drafted the energy justice principles that guided the motion, to the community workshops and focus groups that met with low income and underrepresented communities across the city, to the excellent report that CEMO commissioned to report back on all of these efforts and summarize the community's recommendations. We learned a lot through this process, and there's certainly things we know we can do better next year, and I'm happy to talk about some of that during the discussion. But the reason that these policies are so comprehensive is because of the community contributions that went into the policy design. And I think it's important to thank everyone who spent hours learning about, questioning, and contributing to making these policies better. And for the city to recognize that these invaluable contributions are important, and to commit to doing more in-depth engagement in the future. As we heard earlier, the new buildings ordinance passed unanimously today, which is a huge win for public health and for robust community engagement that we hope will serve as a model going forward. These are exciting and challenging times for the city in light of the council scandal. I think transparency, accountability, representation, and community oversight really matter more now than ever. Additionally, not every climate policy is benefiting from a similar process to the one that decarb went through. And I think we need to be vigilant that the solutions being advanced are ground truth in communities' experience, particularly frontline communities' experiences. We feel that a priority should be for the next council and mayoral administration should be to be proactive, ensuring that all communities, particularly those who have been actively disenfranchised and remain unrepresented or underrepresented today, have the opportunity to engage with and provide input on the decisions that will impact them the most. We look forward to continuing to find ways to improve public participation and oversight in the city's decision-making, and are grateful to have the CEMO and Marta as partners in this work. So it's been challenging and rewarding work getting these policies to this point, and we just really appreciate Marta and CEMO and Liberty Hill for helping to co-create and implement this process with us. So thank you all for your attention, and looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex, for your partnership and LEAPs and PSRLAs. Now I'll hand it over to Commissioner Gutierrez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Gutierrez, and I am one of the youth commissioners on the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission. I am proud to represent both my community and youth in this role. As we prepare for an equitable green transition, it is important that we invite youth to the conversation and recognize that youth deserve a say on policies and initiatives that will directly impact both their present lives and futures. We are long overdue in the misconception that youth do not understand the devastating consequences of climate change. Just as our elders, we experience climate change now, and we will experience it down the line. We can and do bring a much needed voice to the conversation. As a youth, I have personally advocated on behalf of my community around several environmental justice issues through my involvement with Become Beautiful's youth group called UTEP, Youth United Towards Environmental Protection. I was involved with the campaigns such as calling for the closure of the Valley Generating Station and Wyman Airport. And, those are ongoing campaigns that can only be possible with the involvement with youth, whether it's showing up to make public comment or, canvassing. Youth, I feel like, are at forefront of campaigns. And so being involved with these campaigns has emphasized the need for frontline communities such as Pacoima to be included in all the planning steps of decarbonization. We cannot stray away from listening to communities and experts who are first-handly experiencing and bearing the consequences of climate change, because only those who bear testimony to the problem can truly offer both effective and equitable solutions. Lastly, and additionally, now as we prepare for a citywide decarbonization, it is crucial that we are educating our community and meeting our community where they're at. This requires CEMO, the CMC, and council to intentionally build intergenerational community trust, be aware of the systemic barriers that keep underrepresented communities from being included, and all in all, bridging the gaps that will allow us to achieve equitable decarbonization. That is all for me today. Thank you.
Wonderful, Michelle. Thank you so much. We absolutely need the voice of our youth and in every decision that we're making at the City of Los Angeles. And we're grateful for your participation and representation, not just of youth, but the Pacoima community, the larger Valley community, and all of the marginalized communities of Los Angeles. So thank you so much. We're going to give you, I think, the results of the Menti poll right before we go to Q&A. Andres, could you put those on the screen, please? So basically, people said that they want better outdoor air quality and climate from reduced gas extraction. Not surprising. They want healthier indoor air and no indoor air gas exposure as their number 2. And as their number 3, indoor thermal comfort and safe energy saving improvements. Fantastic. So that kind of makes sense to me. I appreciate that. Is there another one? No. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and transition to the Q&A and provide an opportunity to have the questions that have been submitted to be responded to.
Okay. So just to start us off, how you doing, y'all? I have one question here previously that we had from registration. How will the feedback provided by the community during the CELA series be incorporated into policy?
Great. I guess I'll take that. Well, it's a policy development is quite a process at the City of Los Angeles, and there are different points of influence, right? So the model that we have at the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office is to gather the input through the series, through focus groups, through surveys, develop a report, present it to the commission votes on it, and then passes it on to the council. Now that's the formal way that CEMO is facilitating the influencing of climate policy. However, back and forth conversation begins to happen. For example, with building decarb and the new and existing building decarbonization policies, many of the same organizations are directly conveying this very information and these recommendations to the council offices. They're also conveying it to each other, organizing other members of the community, participating in public comment in committee, participating in public comment in the council. And it's the the numbers, it's basically a numbers game. The more people are engaged, and the more the same message is being heard, it becomes even more and more relevant for the council to integrate that into policy. So it really is necessary for everyone to get involved and everyone to submit their voices so that they can be reflected in this overarching advocacy and innovative governance modeling. I hope that helps. And if the panelists want to respond, that would be great.
Yeah. And again, the question was, how will the feedback provided by the community during the CELA series be incorporated into policy? So if Alex, Michelle, Antonio, if y'all maybe want to speak from what you've seen so far or how you can see that growing in the future as well, feel free to share. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just jump in real quick and say that I think there's sort of the formal route that Marta mentioned, but also a lot of our organizations are very interested in knowing what members and community members think about these policy decisions. So sort of an informal route is that, you know, as we've been participating in all these and learning from community, we're adjusting our own advocacy to reflect the things that we learn. So when we're meeting with council offices, and I appreciate the council offices that are on the call for you know, meeting with us and giving us the time to talk through these issues. You know, I think that can be sort of another avenue where community-based organizations are really trying to reflect the voices of the communities that we serve.
And I think another good example is that what basically Councilmember Nithya Raman alluded to, there was a lot of urgency behind the building decarbonization policy. And I think if the communities had not been as involved, we may have gone forward with an existing building decarb policy. And because all of you were involved, that process was methodically slowed down so that we can integrate not just this report, but all of your voices to ensure that we do create modeling for sustainable financing of the transition, of the green transition. Next question, Andres.
All right, I think Antonio, if you had
I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. I was just going to add that it's you can see it all over the report. I mean, it's cited. As a commissioner, we've received the updates from Martha and the staff. One, we wouldn't want to ignore it, and if we did, it's very hard to ignore. So it's definitely present in the work and the meetings.
Thank you, Antonio. Appreciate that. And so another question we had here, I think this was maybe previously when the council members were present, but I think still relevant. What is the city doing to partner with LADWP? And maybe for the folks here, what role do you see with your respective organization in the relationship between the city and LADWP, or what role maybe y'all have already had between the city and LADWP? Yeah.
Right. So I think there's a real intentional effort on behalf of the city, CEMO, and other departments and LADWP to collaborate and to maximize our resources and align our planning. I think the LA 100 equity strategies is an example of LADWP making a sincere effort to create more equitable energy policy. And some of those same organizations on their committee are actually on our commission, and they're also participating in the design of the Climate Equity LA series. So you have this ability to, you know, integrate these voices and these recommendations both with the city and LADWP. And then we're meeting obviously with the leadership of LADWP when Council President Gregorian announced that we were going to have a chief heat officer. The next thing you know, the LADWP was announcing their Cool LA campaign, which is going to further add to create thermally comfortable homes and make it more affordable to cool people's homes. So we're constantly, I think, influencing each other and having dialogue, particularly when we hear the priorities that are coming from the community.
You know, Marta, the only thing I would add, and just thinking of our city and of our region, not just a collaboration with LADWP and the city, but of course also the county and LAUSD. LAUSD also has these big goals. So does the community college district. And I think the more that these conversations are happening across the various jurisdictions, the more equitable our approach will be, and the faster we'll be able to reduce our emissions. So,
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, we're definitely collaborating with the county and where we can with the state of California. And then to address this question, what is the likelihood of CEMO getting funding support from other governments? We just contracted with a grants manager, so we will be applying for some strategic government grants, but we'll also be relaying that information to community leaders so that if there's funding available for nonprofit organizations, we will, and labor, we will make those available to you as well.
And I think because of time, I think with that will probably have to be the final question. And then I think, yeah, we are transitioning to closing words.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I have the pleasure to introduce to you Angelo Logan. He's the Senior Director for Environmental and Climate Justice at Liberty Hill. And he's still very much settling into that role, but he's also a member of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So we're really fortunate to have Angelo with us, and he will close for us. Angelo, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Martha. I just got to say what an honor and privilege it is to be working with you all on this this work and within this office. And, you know, I wanted to close by kind of reiterating and kind of sharing back with you what I've heard over this meeting. And you heard loud and clear two main things. One is that there's great opportunity. We've seen that in the actions that have been taken at City Council level over the last couple of days. And two, that work wouldn't happen unless you all have been engaged and involved in holding policymakers' feet to the fire. So I want to encourage you all to stay engaged, stay involved, and, you know, as the saying goes, you know, either you shape policy or policy shapes you. So stay engaged so that you can shape the policy to achieve real environmental justice, climate justice, and equity. And we look forward to seeing you in future events. Thank you for allowing me to play this role and work with you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Angelo. Have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you not just at the next event, but in City Council, and come visit CEMO at City Hall. And again, thank you to all of the anchor organizations that we've listed here. And we'll see you soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
thank you, Marta. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely night. Gracias a todos y feliz noche.